Excited to bring you more great interviews. I believe we are not to be the hero, we're to be the hero maker. And there's so much we can learn from other people's stories and their journeys. And let us be teachable to learn, unlearn, relearn, and certainly evaluate our experience. One that's done it well, a native Vermonter that's certainly done exceptionally well for all of us small town kids that look up to him, literally and figuratively. This is Chad Copeland. Chad, how are you?
Good, Jeff. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. So behind me, 6'7", 225 from Plainfield, Vermont. It is Chad Copeland. When you think about growing up in Plainfield, Vermont, having the opportunity to play college basketball, having an outstanding high school career, what are your thoughts coming from such a small town?
I actually, I embodied it. Growing up, my dad and my grandfather, they both actually went to Twinfield. My dad won a state championship. At that time, early in my high school career, you could see, you kind of said it, when you're walking around a school that's pre-K through 12 with 300 students, everyone looks up to you. A big reason initially was because I was taller than everybody. But you see it a lot in like pro athletics. You don't choose to be a mentor to kids. If someone looks up to you, you have to embody that or try your best to be a mentor and to help student athletes. So for me, it was kind of just embodying being that person. And then growing up and playing for Twinfield, it went back to more like family heritage and my father winning a state championship and kind of wanting to follow in those footsteps a little bit.
So Chad, you are 6'7". When did you reach your growth spurt? Were you always tall, or did it just kind of hit when you were in middle school or something like that?
I think I was always taller than everyone in my class. I mean, that's not saying much coming from a class of 20 students. But for me, I think I hit my growth spurt probably around 7th or 8th grade. I really grew into my body more towards, I would say, my sophomore year of high school when I started to lift weights and do just kind of work on my body more. I was kind of lanky and goofy growing up and playing. So,
well, I just want to make this screen a little bit smaller so they can see behind me. You did play at Twinfield, but you went on to play at Castleton, named to the Hall of Fame, but the team MVP, all ECAC New England, NAC All Tournament team. What can you say about the coaches you had collegiately and the teammates that really pushed you from that small town to playing at Castleton?
Yeah. Even before collegiately, I think it started with my high school coaches. And it started with Joe Salerno. Joe asked me to play on his Lone Wolf team. I think, and he was he had just started, and he created that team. And he asked me to play. And I think his mentorship through the whole process of trying to figure out what school was best kind of came down to Castleton. The Castleton assistant coach and the head coach, Paul Copeland, they were at every single one of my games my senior year, and they were at a few events my junior year. Going there changed my life because they really instilled a lot in me early. Leadership, trying to be one of the hardest workers. But Coach Copeland did so much for me. Two summers out of my 4 years there, or actually 5 years, I got hurt my senior year and did a medical redshirt year. I spent the summers in different states. One summer I lived with an old assistant coach in Waltham, Mass, right outside of Boston. And I trained with him for the entire summer. And then a second summer, I moved out to Lincoln, Nebraska, and I lived with one of my college teammates, and we lived in Lincoln and we worked out every day. Being able to do those things were great. And you could see my growth as the years progressed. And it's something that will stick with me forever. And I'm so grateful for being able to have the mentorship of those coaches, but as well, just having the opportunity to see different parts of the United States and play against different competition.
Yeah, for sure. And now I'm quite a bit older than you. And I remember just reading about you, watching you in high school, and you were thin, a little bit skinny, but you were a very good player. Did you ever, or how motivated did it make you to people when people said like, well, that's good for Division III player, but Division I is a whole different ball game. Talking about Vermont sports in particular.
Yeah, I mean, even just growing up in high school, people would say that I was a good basketball player because I was taller than everyone. Yeah, I think at that high school level, maybe that made an impact. But when I got to college, it was you have to embody a work ethic, and you have to kind of really give it your all, but also have an understanding that you're nothing without the players. Like every single player that I played with, they were the best player at their high school,
Hmm.
basically. Um, so it's one of those things that I just think um, you once you get to that level, you have the decision: am I gonna make a difference? Am I gonna be the player that I'm supposed to be, or are you just gonna kind of go with the flow and end up becoming mediocre? Because I've seen it on both ends. I've seen kids that come in and they're not one of the better players in the program, but by the time they're a sophomore, junior, senior, they've put the work in and their potential shows, and they become all conference players or all region players, and it's about the work and it's about listening to the people around you.
What was your major at Castleton?
So I was a sports administration major, and then my senior year, I actually had a cyst in my left knee. It was benign. It was about the size of a golf ball. So I took a
Oh,
medical redshirt year, and I went, and I was done school at that time, but I knew I had another year to play basketball. So I went and I got my master's in athletic leadership. Um, and through my master's, I actually grew for a big passion for just athletic administration as a whole. I went on and I went back to Twinfield. I was at AD at the high school level for a year, and now I'm at
yeah.
Northern Vermont University.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a second. It's kind of cool to hear people's different journeys. One player that I remember, Paven Parrish, I believe he's a little bit younger than you. When he came in, kind of a highly sought recruit from a Division IV level, how did you take him under your wing and really watch him grow up?
Yeah, so me and Paven's still one of my very good friends. Um, for me, I wanted to be a program type player. So what that meant for me was for us to be successful, I had to bring other guys in, and I had to connect with other guys. And I saw through guys like Mark Comstock, he played at Rutland High School, and Logan White. Those two guys in particularly, Logan is from Hartford. Those two guys were all conference players when I came in as a freshman. So for me, I kind of embodied the vision of try to bring the best Vermont player in each year, to make Castleton that homegrown university, where you're getting one of those best players each year. So when Paven came around, I already had a good relationship with him. But Paven, he kind of does it on his own. He's a very good student. He works really hard. He had a couple setbacks with injuries throughout his career, but for me, it was more of let him ride it out. Be there to support him, be there to help him. But his head was always in the right place, and he always worked to be on the right track throughout his entire career.
How did you balance being a student and being an athlete?
Yeah, being a student athlete at even the Division III level, I would say it potentially is harder than the Division I level, because Division I, you have those times blocked out where you're
Yeah.
working out, you're lifting, and then you can go to a study hall or go to a class. For me, it was, where do I fit my workouts in? Where do I do this? So it was difficult in my early years. Academics, I've always cared about my academics, but for me, it was, really time management and figuring out where I can fit in those workouts, fit in my social life, but really maintain my grades, to stay eligible.
So let's back up, hit rewind. Who are the biggest influences on you growing up, specifically with the sport of basketball? And did you play other sports?
Yeah. So for me, growing up, influences were actually coaches. I was never someone that always watched the NBA, but I would say when I was a sophomore in high school to my junior year of high school, I got recruited to go to Vermont Academy. So I went and played pickup with some of those guys. And when I was there, I realized, wow, like there's some really, really good players in this country. Like, so I looked at guys that were there, even some Vermont guys like Connor Merrill. He had ended up going to Skidmore. And I played against him when I was at Castleton. But it was always the guys in the state that were better than me that I kind of looked up to, but also motivated myself to be just as good as. And then what was the second part of your question? Sorry.
I was just going to ask the motivations, but did you play other sports growing up as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah. So I played baseball after my freshman year of high school. I stopped playing baseball, but I played baseball and soccer growing up until my freshman year. After freshman year of high school, I stopped. And the main reason was travel for my AAU team. That took a toll on me because I would have to travel typically 1 hour, 2 or 3 times a week one way just to go to practice. And then obviously games, we only played one tournament in Vermont. Everything else was out of state.
Yeah.
And yeah, baseball, that was a big sport for me.
And again, there's something about Vermont high school sports where it truly draws the community. Twinfield, definitely. You guys have been in Powerhouse for a long time and you fill the gym. What's interesting to find out is once you play at a college level, a lot of college gyms are not filled with fans. Was that hard for you to get used to when your high school was always jam packed?
Yeah, it was. Fortunately at Castleton, it was the gym was basically packed every single night for us. So that was great. But when we went on the road, we would play teams that are top 25 teams that there would be 15, 20 people in the stands. Partially, I've learned now being an administrator that has a lot to do with like when school breaks are, basketball seasons during Christmas break. So
Yeah.
students are home for a whole month. But for us, it was weird. It's one of those things where we could go into our home gym, and in high school, you kind of go into your home gym and you're instantly motivated by the people that are in that room. But in college, it was you have to get into a routine. How am I going to get the best effort out of myself every single day? And yeah, for me in my freshman, and I would even say some in my sophomore year, it was a challenge.
So when we look at this COVID-19 quarantine, this pandemic, how it's certainly affected life, but sports in particular, what are your thoughts on playing professionally with a empty stadium or even at a college level this fall for different sports playing with no fans?
I think that will be interesting. I think at the professional level, um, I think in general, professional athletes kind of have to build themselves up to come out and compete every single night. I don't know if it's going to affect them as much because you don't, you have some people in the stands that I'm sure but you have, and it's a packed arena and things like that. But it's gonna affect it a lot. I think it's gonna affect college athletics the most. Because I think when you think about college athletics, you think about the institution, and you also think about the culture that the institution brings. And you have the Cameron Crazies, and you have all these different venues with these students. So I think it's going to make a huge difference at the collegiate level. I don't know if it'll affect it at the pro level as much.
Chad, talk to us now about your role at Northern Vermont University. What do you do and how have you been impacted in your role now and how are you preparing for this fall?
Yeah, so I'm one of the assistant athletic directors. My title is assistant athletic director for internal and external communications. Basically, what that means is I'm the sports information director, so I run all the events. Everything that you see on our social media and our websites goes through my office. I run all development, so I do a lot of alumni stuff, a lot of fundraising, and then this year I worked a little bit with the basketball team when I had time to. Um, but right now, our institution is we're slowly bringing students back onto campus. When the pandemic hit, everyone left their stuff on campus. So right now, the process is to slowly get students their belongings back. But it's been hard. You look at any college or any institution, and you have it becomes a home for students for the 4 years that they're there. So for us, it's you ask any athletic director right now, what does the future hold, and everyone's going to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And that's hard, and that's even harder for small schools because you see all these small schools closing. I know, it's no um, it's no it's not new, but everyone's seen that Northern Vermont University and the Vermont State College system has been in trouble,
Yeah.
and it's how we get out of that hole. But my role more was I feel for our students, and I feel for our alumni, and it's just supporting those people in a time like this.
Yeah, and you actually played in a benefit game that I put on when I was with Journey Mentoring. You can see you're pretty high going for that dunk right there. But it was so important, I felt, to have you be a part because you're so willing to give back to the local community, whether it's Twinfield High School or just a mentoring game. When we think now about the public, how important is it for them to get involved and really support our Vermont state colleges like Northern Vermont University?
Yeah, I think that's huge. You see the VSCS Thrive Facebook pages, and you have all these alumni, you have all these people from the state of Vermont kind of stepping up with ideas on how to save these institutions. But I think it's huge for the state of Vermont as a whole. Money talks. I don't think anybody can compare anything when it comes to money. But wherever I am, I always look to give back in terms of, how do we affect, like, what way can we affect positive impact?
Yeah.
And I think the more voices that are heard, the better it's going to be for our institutions, and just for our students and our communities as a whole.
Yeah, now this was definitely a fun event last fall, the Granite City Shootout. A return to high school, how many times did you go to the Odd? And as a high school player, what did it feel like playing at the Barry Auditorium?
Yeah, so I played at the Odd my sophomore, junior, and senior year of high school. When we got there my sophomore year, we actually lost to Proctor in the semifinals, but it was our first time there in 17 or 18 years.
Wow.
And when I was a sophomore, I was in shock. I remember matching up a kid. His name's Zach Courier. He played at Proctor. He actually was a student at Castleton afterward, but I think he had 30, 40 pounds on me at that time. And he ate me up that night. And it's something that I laugh at. But it's, playing there that night, it was crazy. But I remember going there my junior year, and we actually won the state championship my junior and senior year. And it wasn't the same. I think winning my junior year was awesome. Winning my senior year, we were kind of just standing there like, okay, it's over. Nice.
Yeah, yeah.
Part of that was, I think everyone looked for us to win and expected us to win. But it's a great atmosphere. And I'm glad that last fall, last winter, I could bring that event back to the Odd, because that's huge. And my understanding of it is, and the reason why I really wanted to do it is because there's a lot of Vermont kids that are at these institutions that might not have had the opportunity to play at the Odd when they were in high school. There's no better way to do it than play at the collegiate level there.
I was just going to bring up that point, that there's nothing like playing at the Odd. I never had the opportunity. This year I was an assistant coach, and we made it to the semifinal game that we won. The Harwood girls were excellent in that game, but just being at the Odd and then just seeing all these colleges with students outside of Vermont understanding, wow, this is a special place. The Barry Auditorium, it is old and it is rickety, and there are a couple of dead spots on the floor. But what is your fondest memory of playing there? Is it the first time being shell-shocked at the environment, or is it the second of your back-to-back championships and just knowing or feeling as though you own the place?
I think it was my senior year. I remember playing Rochester. I think it was my senior year. So we play Rochester senior year in the state semifinals. And both teams are at the gym so early. I mean, Twinfield's 20 minutes from Barry,
Right,
the school.
right.
So, we were there. I think we were there hour and a half, 2 hours early for our game, which was fine. But I remember Rochester coming in, and I remember one of their players coming up to me, and he was kind of harassing me before the game, and we're just sitting on the bench. and he wouldn't stop, right? He wouldn't stop. So I think that was a good memory. But I think, yeah, being shell shocked. I think going into a gym like that, thinking you're in like the Hoosiers gym,
Yeah.
it's like I felt like at that time I was on the biggest stage in the world. Um, so that was great. And the odd's a special place. I'll talk about a little bit about the tournament that I put on this past year for the colleges, the Vermont colleges. You had to change that court and make it NCAA regulations.
Yeah.
So the 3-point line, the charge circle, everything like that, the coaches' boxes. So that was a task in itself. And I think if the NCAA continues to move lines back, there might not be any more college games at the odd. But I thought it was awesome. Yeah.
Now, I think this is either an alumni game or something that took place at Twinfield. And when you look at the future of high school sports, specifically basketball at Twinfield, are you filled with great hope, or what are your thoughts? I have shared before, I think AAU is a necessary evil in Vermont. I think it can be a money grab. I don't know how much player development happens, whereas you might get better just playing against better competition outside on the playground. But with Mini Metro, with so many sports going on year round, what do you feel is the legitimacy of high school sports versus that of team sports?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in terms of Vermont, you're going to start to see more schools merge. I think there's going to be more school mergers. I think there's always going to be there's a place in the world for athletics, right? Athletics has been around since ancient times, sports in general. So I think there's always going to be a place for sports. I think when we talk about small schools in Vermont, even high schools, you're going to start to see some school mergers over the next, 8 to 10 to 12 years.
Yeah.
But my hope is that, sports at the high school level will continue to thrive. At the high school level, I talked about it when I was a high school athletic director. We use it as a tool, so the programs that I've always been a part of, and I'm thankful for it, being able to coach Spartan AAU at Castleton. I coached 5th and 6th graders and 7th and 8th graders, right? It was about doing it the right way. I could care less if we went into a gym and won a game, but it's about using it as a tool to teach these kids.
Right.
There were some kids that didn't even make their high school team as they progressed and they went on to their high school team. But every time I see them, right, they'll always talk about a lesson they learned, or they'll always talk about, how what they learned at AAU basketball has helped them progress through them being a soccer player, a baseball player, So I think there's always going to be a place for it. It's just, how many teams, you see the VPA always in conversation potentially about only having 3 divisions instead of 4 divisions. Right. So I think with school mergers, I'm hoping for Twinfield to thrive, and still kind of have that culture of, being at the odd. But it's uncertain.
And I guess I meant team sports instead of club sports. That was the comparison I was trying to make. I'll give you the last word. Chad Copeland, making some time. Thanks again for being here. And again, thanks for your generosity, just playing pickup and passing me the ball. That was kind too. You didn't have to, but I'm glad you did. The final word for you, Northern Vermont University. Why would you tell students to really look at it as a viable option, and how good has it been for you?
Yeah, I think being at Northern Vermont University, I'm finishing up my 2nd year right now. It's a place where people care. And it's a place where you have the opportunities, and you can come in and make something of yourself, both athletically and just being a student at the institution. As we change as a university and as an institution, I still think that there's a lot of good things. And I hope that a lot of students looking to either stay in Vermont or out-of-state students looking to come into the state really look at Northern Vermont University as a home for them.
And then final question on a personal level, what do you look forward to doing once this pandemic quarantine is over?
I'm hoping to get back in the office a little bit, but for me, right now I'm going out and fishing, just kind of staying to myself. But for me, it's probably get back into a gym, play some pickup with some of my friends, or just find some local talent in the Burlington area and go and play, because there's nothing like it.
Oh, that's a fact. Hey, Chad, thanks so much for making the time, and we wish you all the best.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
And again, that's Chad Copeland. Kind of cut him off right there. That wasn't very polite. Anyway, check out Northern Vermont University and just see what good Vermont has to offer, whether it's coming from Plainfield, Vermont, attending Castleton, becoming a Hall of Famer, or whatever else that you have planned for your life. Allow yourself to adjust and grow and learn from others. Jeff Fuller's my name. Jay Fuller Interviews, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube as well. We'll talk to you guys soon. And isn't it great hearing these stories? It's awesome to know that whatever you're going through, there's a plan and purpose for your life. So take that next step, because failure is not the opposite of success. Success is laid brick by brick, learning from our failures. All right, guys, we'll talk to you soon.